Crack! Splintering wood exploded across my kitchen floor as the cabin door caved inward. There she stood, Dolores Wickham, HOA president, holding a sledgehammer like some deranged home improvement show host. Her Botox-frozen face beamed with the kind of satisfaction you'd see on a cat that finally caught the canary. Behind her, two nervous security guards filmed everything on their phones, thinking they were capturing my arrest. Little did they know, I didn't even flinch. Just sat there at my kitchen table while my gray-haired breakfast companion calmly sipped his coffee. "Dolores," I said, savoring each word. "Meet Chief Raymond Burkhart, State Police Internal Affairs Division, retired but still carries his badge." Her face went from triumph to terror faster than a Ferrari hitting a brick wall. The sledgehammer clattered to the floor. "What would you do if your HOA president literally broke down your door? Where are you watching from? Let me back up 6 months and tell you how I ended up with an HOA president wielding a sledgehammer at my door. I'm Marcus Holloway, 45, former Army engineer. Got my medical discharge after an IED, rearranged my left leg in Afghanistan. Nothing heroic, just wrong place, wrong time, wrong road. But the VA keeps me afloat, and I can still do remote consulting work, which pays better than you'd think. When Grandpa died last winter, he left me his crown jewel, a cabin on Pine Ridge Lake. 3 acres of heaven, complete with a 1940s log cabin that still reeked of his pipe tobacco and WD-40. The property included a private dock where Grandpa taught me that patience was just another word for fishing. That dock had weathered 70 winters, outlasting 3 marriages in town and 1 attempt to build a Walmart. The cabin sat right on the edge of Lakeshore Estates, where 200 identical McMansions sprouted like beige mushrooms after rain. Enter Dolores Wickham, HOA president for 7 years running, mostly because nobody else wanted to deal with her. Picture this: late 50s, helmet hair that could survive a Category 5 hurricane, always wearing pantsuits in 80-degree weather. She drove a white Escalade with Boss Lady vanity plates. I swear on my Purple Heart, that's real. Her perfume arrived 3 minutes before she did, gardenias mixed with entitlement. When she talked, every S whistled like a tea kettle about to blow. Our first meeting? Grandpa's funeral reception. While everyone else was sharing memories over ham sandwiches, Dolores cornered me by the deviled eggs. "So sorry for your loss," she whistled, eyeing the cabin through the window. "Now, about joining our HOA. $500 monthly, but think of the property values." She actually pulled out a membership form at my grandfather's wake. The woman had all the tact of a bulldozer in a china shop. I politely declined, explaining the cabin wasn't part of her kingdom. Her lipsticked smile tightened. "We'll see about that, soldier boy." She spat soldier boy like it tasted bad. Should have known then she had a special hatred for veterans. Were harder to push around than the suburban retirees she usually terrorized. 3 weeks later, the games began. A certified letter claimed my dock encroached on HOA lake access, demanded removal within 30 days or face aggressive legal remedies. The letter read like someone had eaten a law dictionary and thrown up on paper. But here's what Dolores didn't know about Army engineers. We document everything. I spent 2 days in the county courthouse basement, a place that smelled like democracy had died and been buried in mothballs, found gold in those yellowed pages. Grandpa's deed, filed in 1943, included permanent lake access rights. His dock predates Dolores's entire HOA by 4 decades. The surveyor's notes even mentioned the dock as a landmark. 1-sentence takeaway: in property law, first in time means first in right. I mailed her copies of everything, highlighting the relevant parts in yellow because I'm helpful like that. Her response came not by mail, but by Escalade. She roared up my gravel drive at 7 a.m., heels punching holes in the ground like she was drilling for oil. "Listen here, soldier boy," she hissed, gardenia perfume forming a toxic cloud. "I've removed 4 families from this lake. You'll be number 5. Pine Ridge was classic small-town politics. Population 8,000, split between families who'd been here since the trees had names and newcomers who thought rustic meant a 2-car garage. Dolores's HOA controlled 60% of the lakefront and spreading. The mayor? Her brother-in-law. The sheriff? Let's just say his new boat came with HOA club stickers. When locals said Sheriff Patterson stayed neutral in property disputes, they meant he stayed on Dolores's payroll. The chainsaw woke me at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, which is basically a war crime in rural America. I stumbled outside in boxers and an old Army PT shirt to find an HOA work crew installing a chain-link fence across my driveway. Not fixing potholes or trimming branches, actively blocking my only exit. Dolores stood there in a pink pantsuit that screamed Realtor Convention keynote speaker, clutching a clipboard like Moses with the tablets. "Morning, soldier boy," she chirped, every S whistling like steam escaping from hell's radiator. "Just reclaiming HOA common area. According to our updated survey, your driveway sits on community property." I noticed she said updated the way dictators say elected. The crew had already planted 3 posts, and their chainsaw was currently gnawing through the trunk of a massive oak. Not just any oak, the one Grandpa planted in 1954 when Dad was born. I'd carved my initials in that bark at age 7, right next to Dad's from 1962. Now I may walk with a limp, but my brain works fine. Phone out, recording started. "Gentlemen," I called out, voice calm as morning coffee. "Quick question. Can I see your contractor's license?" The chainsaw died faster than conversation at a tax audit. The operator studied his boots like they held lottery numbers. "We're, volunteers," he mumbled. "Volunteers operating commercial chainsaws without permits?" I zoomed in on the equipment. "And are you aware you're cutting a heritage oak? That tree's on the county preservation registry. State law says $100 fine per inch of trunk diameter. This beauty's 42 inches around. You could actually hear them doing the math. $4,200 worth of trouble." I dialed the Environmental Protection Office on speaker. "Morning, Janet. Marcus Holloway here. Got some folks taking a chainsaw to the registered heritage oak at 1847 Pine Ridge Road, the big one from 1954. Janet's gasp was audible. "The Holloway oak? I'll have someone there in 10 minutes. The crew scattered like roaches when the lights come on. One guy abandoned his post hole digger mid-dig. Dolores stood there vibrating with rage, clipboard trembling. "This isn't over," she shrieked, spittle flying. A paper escaped her clipboard and landed in mud. I helpfully ground it deeper with my heel. That afternoon found me back in the courthouse basement, my new weekend retreat. The air tasted like old paper and forgotten justice. Ethel, the ancient clerk who'd outlasted 5 mayors, had started saving me the good chair. "She-devil strike again?" she asked, sliding me a coffee in a mug that said "World's Okayest Clerk." Dolores's updated survey was filed exactly 24 hours before the fence incident. The surveyor's signature looked like an EKG readout during cardiac arrest. But here's where it got interesting. She'd pulled identical stunts on 4 other properties: the Nguyen family, the Johnsons, the Petersons, and old Mrs. Morgan. Same playbook. Bogus survey, intimidation, forced sale. Every property ended up with the same buyer, Wickham Realty LLC. Subtle as a sledgehammer, that one. I built a spreadsheet on my laptop documenting the pattern. Dates, amounts, victims. The Nguyens had lasted 6 months before breaking. Their daughter was heading to MIT on full scholarship when they were forced to relocate. That detail made my coffee taste bitter. Word travels fast in a small town. By evening, Jake from the hardware store had corralled me by the security cameras. "Heard about this morning," he said, voice low. "The Nguyens were good people. Their kid tutored my grandson in calculus, no charge." He leaned in, smelling like WD-40 and conspiracy. "Few of us been talking. You ain't fighting alone." That's how Pine Ridge Property Rights was born, a group text that grew from 4 to 12 members in 3 hours. Janet Thorpe fired the opening shot. "That harridan claimed my roses blocked lake views and poisoned them with herbicide. My grandmother's roses." By midnight, everyone had shared their Dolores horror story. Monday brought the violation letters. Daily delivery, each more absurd. Grass height, 3.25 inches instead of 3 $50. Boat angle, 87 degrees instead of 90, $75. American flag insufficiently illuminated, $100. That last one hit different. I'd served under that flag, bled under it, watched friends die for it. Now some pantsuit tyrant was fining me over landscape lighting. 2 weeks, 47 violations, $1,750 in fines. But Dolores had made a tactical error. Every citation was sent certified mail with her signature. Every envelope postmarked and dated. She thought she was building a case. Instead, she was documenting her own harassment campaign. Beautiful. 1-sentence takeaway. In legal battles, your enemy's paperwork often becomes your best evidence. Let them document their own crimes. Dolores must have spent her weekend watching legal dramas because Monday morning brought a new strategy. A water management district truck pulled up, followed by 2 officials with clipboards and cameras. They looked apologetic before they even spoke. "Mr. Holloway, we received a complaint about your dock causing environmental damage," the younger one said, avoiding eye contact. "We need to inspect and potentially issue a removal order." I offered them coffee. "Kill 'em with kindness," Grandpa always said. "Sure, inspect away, but first, want to see the environmental impact study from when it was built?" I pulled out a folder I'd been keeping for just this moment. 1943 Army Corps of Engineers approval, signed by Colonel Theodore Wickham. I paused for effect. Any relation to Dolores, you think? The older inspector nearly choked on his coffee. Turns out Great Uncle Teddy was the black sheep Dolores never mentioned, the one who'd approved the dock that now threatened her empire. Irony tastes better than coffee sometimes. They went through the motions, took their pictures, and left with handshakes and apologies. Between you and me, the older guy whispered, she files complaints weekly. We're getting tired of it. But I knew Dolores had taken photos to support her complaint, which meant she'd been trespassing. Time to play offense. I invested in 12 trail cameras, the kind hunters use to track deer. Military-grade night vision, motion-activated, uploads to cloud storage. I spent an afternoon setting them up, each angle calculated like I was establishing a fire-based perimeter. The smell of pine sap stuck to my hands, bringing back memories of better times in worse places. The first night's footage was comedy gold. 2 HOA security guards creeping through my property at 2 a.m., flashlights sweeping like amateur commandos. One tried to photograph my boat registration, the other got spooked by a raccoon and fell in the lake. But night 3 brought the real prize, one guard pouring something into the soil around my apple tree, the 100-year-old apple tree that produced fruit for half the county every fall. I had the soil tested, diesel fuel mixed with herbicide, tree killer, plain and simple, that crossed a line from harassment to destruction of property. I burned the footage to DVDs, made copies, filed one with the state police since our sheriff was conveniently understaffed for property crimes. The revenge came next morning. I posted the security footage on the Pine Ridge Community Facebook page with the caption, HOA security poisoning trees at night, is your property next? The video went viral in the way things go viral in small towns, shared 847 times in 6 hours. Comments ranged from outrage to threats to Old Testament justice. Dolores responded by having the page mass reported and shut down. Zuckerberg's algorithms don't understand small-town justice. That's when Margaret Morgan called, former HOA board member, resigned 2 years ago. Meet me at the diner, she said. Bring a flash drive. Margaret looked like a librarian but had the demeanor of a mob lawyer. Over pie that tasted like vindication, she slid me a folder 3 inches thick. 5 years of records, she whispered. Dolores has been embezzling, taking HOA funds, buying foreclosures through her LLC, selling them back to the HOA at markup. It's all here. Bank transfers, property deeds, board minutes she doctored. The numbers were staggering. Average theft, $30,000 per property. Total over 5 years, $1.2 million. She turned the HOA into her personal ATM, and board members who questioned it found themselves facing the same harassment I was getting. The Petersons tried to audit the books, Margaret said. Their house caught fire 2 weeks later. Electrical problem, officially. Word was spreading about our resistance. My little group text had grown to 30 members. We started meeting at Janet's barn Sunday evenings, potluck style. Nothing bonds people like shared enemy and good potato salad. Dolores had united the community in a way she never intended. But she wasn't done. The Whisper campaign started next. Suddenly, I was that unstable veteran with PTSD, the guy who might snap at any moment. Store clerks got nervous when I walked in. The barber suddenly had no openings. Even the gas station attendant watched me like I might steal the pumps. Dolores had weaponized my service, turned my sacrifice into a scarlet letter. The taste of copper pennies filled my mouth. Old stress response from deployment. But I'd learned something in Afghanistan. The enemy reveals their position when they fire. Dolores had just shown me how desperate she was. Saturday morning started with my boat engine coughing like a chain smoker climbing stairs. I lifted the cowling and found the problem immediately. Sugar crystals glazing the fuel tank opening like the world's worst margarita rim. The distributor cap was missing entirely, probably decorating Dolores's trophy shelf. The marine mechanic whistled low. Sugar in the tank, missing electrical components. Someone really doesn't like you. He quoted $3,000 for repairs. And that's the friends and family discount. I asked about my security cameras. Funny thing, that particular night, all 4 cameras facing the dock had malfunctioned. If by malfunction you mean someone spray-painted the lenses black, I paid for repairs without flinching. Dolores wanted me angry, reactive, making mistakes. Instead, I documented everything, filed insurance claims, and kept building my case like it was an engineering project. Measure twice, strike once. Her next move came wrapped in bureaucratic gift paper. An official county notice declaring my cabin an abandoned structure and fire hazard. The inspector would arrive Monday to confirm what was already decided, demolition within 30 days. The notice was signed by one Harold Wickham, because of course Dolores had a cousin in building safety. Sunday found me elbow deep in research. Harold Wickham, licensed building inspector? Or was he? California's contractor database is a beautiful thing when you know where to look. Turns out Harold's license expired in 2021. He'd been conducting illegal inspections for 3 years. Every structure he'd condemned followed the same pattern. Non-HOA property, failed inspection, quick sale to Wickham Realty LLC. One-sentence takeaway. Always verify government officials' credentials. Bureaucratic power often relies on nobody checking the paperwork. I compiled a list of Harold's victims. 17 properties in 3 years, all sold below market value. All now had HOA McMansions sprouting like tumors. The Nguyen's family restaurant, the Johnson's carpentry shop, Mrs. Morgan's flower garden, all buried under beige developments. Harold and Dolores had tag-teamed a whole community into submission. Monday morning, Harold arrived in a county truck he probably wasn't authorized to drive. He had the look of a man who'd sold his soul on installment plans. Cheap suit, nervous eyes, clipboard held like a shield. "Mr. Holloway," he stammered, "I'm here to inspect your structures for safety compliance." "Welcome, Harold," I said, recording openly. "Before we start, can I see your current inspector's license, just for my records?" His face went through several expressions, finally settling on constipated panic. "It's in the truck," he muttered. "So is mine," I replied. "Right next to my complaint to the state licensing board about you conducting illegal inspections with expired credentials." He actually ran, left his clipboard, jumped in the truck, and peeled out throwing gravel. I photographed his abandoned paperwork, which already had condemned pre-written in the conclusion section. He'd condemned my cabin before even seeing it. The state licensing board loved my complaint. Turned out they'd been getting reports about Harold for years, but needed solid evidence. I provided video, documents, and a trail of victimized families. Harold was suspended pending investigation, and every inspection he'd done in 3 years was under review. 17 families suddenly had hope for justice. Dolores showed up at my gate that evening. No pretense this time, just pure fury radiating off her like heat from asphalt. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she screamed, actually shaking the chain link. "I own this town. I own the mayor. I'll bury you." I stood there recording, letting her rage. Sometimes the best strategy is giving your enemy enough rope. She kept going, listing every official she controlled, every family she'd destroyed, every corner she'd cut. "The sheriff does what I tell him. The judge is my golf buddy. You're nothing. Just another broken soldier who thinks his service means something." That stung, but I kept recording. Her confession was worth more than my pride. When she finally ran out of steam and squealed away in her Escalade, I had 7 minutes of beautiful self-incrimination. I backed it up to 3 cloud services and a flash drive I hid in Grandpa's old tackle box. That night, I sat on my dock despite the HOA's attempt to ban me from my own property. The lake reflected stars like scattered diamonds, and I could smell that mixture of pine and water that meant home. I'd been playing defense too long. Time to shift tactics. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts from veteran events. There, Chief Raymond Burkhart, State Police Internal Affairs, retired but still connected. We'd talked fishing at a VA benefit. More importantly, he'd mentioned hating corruption with the passion of a crusader. I typed carefully, "Chief, how'd you like a weekend of fishing and the chance to catch the biggest corrupt fish in Pine Ridge?" His response came in minutes. "Send me details. I'll bring my tackle box and my badge." Sunday afternoon, I was sorting through Grandpa's filing cabinet looking for more ammunition against Dolores. The old metal drawer stuck like always, requiring that special wiggle-pull curse combination Grandpa had taught me. Between his military discharge papers and Mom's birth certificate, I found a manila envelope marked Important Pine Ridge Original Deeds. Inside was a surveyor's map from 1922, so old the paper felt like tissue. But the wax seal was intact, the signatures clear. I spread it across the kitchen table, weighing down the corners with coffee mugs. What I read made me set down my beer before I dropped it. The entire parcel, all 347 acres now occupied by Lakeshore Estates HOA, had been granted by my great-grandfather, Samuel Holloway. He'd sold it to developers in 1987 with one ironclad provision typed in beautiful legalese. Should any portion of said property be used in hostile action against the Holloway family or their direct descendants, ownership of the entire parcel shall revert immediately to the Holloway estate. I read it 3 times. Then called my lawyer friend Danny, who'd done property law before switching to criminal defense. "Danny, I need you to look at something. How fast can you get here?" He heard something in my voice because he arrived in 20 minutes, still wearing his Sunday fishing vest. Danny studied the document with the reverence of a man holding the Dead Sea Scrolls. He pulled out his phone, accessed the county database, cross-referenced numbers. "Holy litigation, Marcus, this is real. Filed, notarized, and never superseded. The reversion clause is what we call sleeping dynamite, dormant until triggered." He looked up, eyes bright. "Every single thing Dolores has done qualifies as hostile action. You could take the entire HOA with one filing." I stared at the map. "You're telling me I own the land under every McMansion in Lakeshore Estates?" Danny nodded slowly. "Not yet, but the moment you file this with the court, citing the harassment, the false inspections, the criminal trespass, boom, it all reverts. 347 acres, probably worth $30 million in today's market." The power of it sat heavy. I could destroy Dolores, bankrupt the HOA, throw 300 families into legal chaos. The nuclear option sitting in my kitchen next to Grandpa's coffee pot. But I wanted justice, not scorched earth. Those HOA families weren't all bad. Many were just folks who'd bought homes, not knowing their president was a criminal. "I need something more surgical," I told Danny. "Save this for the kill shot if needed." Monday morning, Chief Burkhart arrived in a beat-up F-150, fishing gear visible in the bed. But his eyes held the sharp attention of a cop who'd spent 30 years reading people. Silver-haired, weathered face. Looked like everybody's favorite uncle until you noticed how he cataloged every detail of his surroundings. "Marcus," he said, shaking hands with a grip that meant business. "Heard you've got a corruption problem wearing pantsuit clothing." I led him inside, poured coffee, and spread out 5 months of documentation across my table. He studied each piece, occasionally whistling low or muttering profanity. "This is RICO territory," he said finally. "Racketeering, extortion, conspiracy, fraud. Your HOA president built herself a criminal enterprise." He pulled out his own phone, showing me complaint files. "She's part of a network, 7 counties, same playbook. We've been building a case, but we needed someone on the inside to document it properly." He smiled like a shark spotting a seal. "You've done beautiful work here, son." We spent the afternoon planning. Burkhart suggested letting Dolores make one final, desperate move. "Criminals always overreach when cornered," he explained. "Let her think she's winning. Document everything. When she crosses that last line, and she will, we'll have her on federal charges." He paused, sipping coffee. "Plus, I really do want to catch some bass while I'm here." Tuesday night, Janet Thorpe's barn became our war room. 47 people showed up, each carrying folders, laptops, or boxes of evidence. The place smelled like hay and determination. Burkhart stood at the front, badge on his belt, breaking down RICO law like he was teaching Sunday school. "Racketeering isn't just mob stuff," he explained, pointing to a whiteboard covered in connected names. "It's a pattern of criminal activity used to control legitimate business. What Dolores has done, extortion, fraud, conspiracy, that's textbook RICO. And when we prove the pattern, everyone involved goes down." He drew circles around names. Harold the inspector, 2 sheriff's deputies, a county clerk. Documentation beats accusations every time. What Marcus started, we're going to finish. The room erupted in controlled chaos. The Nguyen family had bank records showing they'd been forced to sell at 40% below market value. Janet produced security footage of HOA goons poisoning her roses at night. The Petersons brought fire department reports suggesting arson but marked inconclusive after someone made donations to the fire chief's campaign. We organized into teams. Tech team would handle recordings and streaming. 7 people with IT backgrounds, led by Marcus's neighbor Tom, who'd run cybersecurity for a Fortune 500 before retiring. "We'll stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch simultaneously," Tom explained. "She can't shut down all of them, plus everything backs up to offshore servers in real time." Legal team assembled documentation. 3 retired lawyers, a paralegal, and Danny coordinating with Burkhart. They prepared packages for the FBI, state attorney general, and federal prosecutors. "Every document notarized, every claim supported by evidence," Danny announced. "When this drops, it'll be airtight." Margaret Morgan led the financial forensics team. 5 accountants and bookkeepers traced Dolores's money like bloodhounds. "She's been sloppy," Margaret reported. "Moved HOA funds through her personal accounts before sending to the Caymans. That's wire fraud, federal jurisdiction." They'd identified $1.2 million stolen, documented every transfer. One sentence takeaway. In cases of systematic corruption, community coordination multiplies individual power exponentially. Many voices become impossible to silence. I reached out to Sarah Winters, investigative reporter from the Capitol. She'd won awards exposing corruption, had that hungry look of someone who lived for taking down bullies. An HOA president running a RICO enterprise? She practically purred over the phone. That's Emmy material. I'll bring a full crew. Thursday was preparation day. Cameras installed at strategic angles around my property. Tom's team tested streaming equipment, backup systems, redundant recordings. If NASA live-streamed moon landings in 1969, we can handle one corrupt HOA president in 2024, he muttered, adjusting angles. We spread the word carefully. No social media. Dolores monitored that. Instead, old-fashioned phone trees, handwritten notes, whispered conversations at the grocery store. Sunday morning, dawn, Marcus's place. Bring cameras. Witness justice. The secrecy made it feel like Revolutionary War planning, if Paul Revere had smartphones. Burkhart spent Friday interviewing victims, building federal case files. Each story was worse than the last. A veteran forced out of his father's house. A widow who'd lost her husband's workshop to fake code violations. A young family bankrupted by fabricated fines. 30 years of police work, Burkhart told me, and this is one of the worst abuse of power cases I've seen. Saturday afternoon, we did final preparations. Chairs arranged on my lawn in courthouse-style rows. American flag prominently displayed, properly lit this time. The reversion clause document in my safe, ready if needed. Danny had prepared the filing papers. One signature would detonate Dolores's empire. The bait was set perfectly. I'd made sure Dolores's spies saw Burkhart arrive, but let them think he was just some fishing buddy. We played cards on this porch, drank beer, told loud stories about bass and trout. Meanwhile, cameras recorded every HOA security patrol, every suspicious vehicle, every trespass onto my property. Saturday evening, Pastor Williams stopped by. Heard there might be need for prayer tomorrow, he said carefully. Mind if I bring some folks from the congregation? The Methodist Church had lost their community garden to HOA expansion. Even God's servants wanted justice. That night I couldn't sleep, not from nerves, from anticipation. Every piece was in place. Documentation compiled, witnesses ready, media alerted, law enforcement prepared. Dolores thought she was coming to arrest a troublesome veteran. Instead, she was walking into the most documented takedown in HOA history. I stood on my dock one last time before dawn, watching mist rise off the water. The lake was calm, but storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Fitting weather for justice. Saturday morning started with a knock at my door. Not Dolores. Too polite. Instead, a nervous man in an expensive suit stood there, briefcase sweating as much as he was. Mr. Holloway, I represent a concerned party who'd like to resolve this situation amicably. I let him in, mainly to watch him squirm. Burkhart stayed in the kitchen, invisible but listening. The lawyer, Daniels, his card said, opened his briefcase with shaking hands. My client is prepared to offer $200,000 for you to relocate. Cash, immediate transfer, no questions asked. Your client being Dolores Wickham? I asked, recording openly. He nodded, pulling out a contract. Sign here, and this unfortunate misunderstanding ends. You get a fresh start somewhere else. The number was interesting. High enough to show desperation, low enough to reveal she had no idea about the reversion clause. Tell Dolores, I said slowly, that this isn't about money anymore. It's about justice. Daniels left looking like a man heading to his own execution. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with next-door notifications. A new group, Concerned Citizens for Safe Neighborhoods, with posts about the dangerous veteran threatening our community. The posts came from accounts created that morning, all with stock photos, all repeating the same talking points. Dolores had hired a PR firm to astroturf outrage. The smear campaign escalated by noon. Someone leaked my VA medical records, highly illegal, with highlighted sections about combat-related stress. Posts claimed I'd threatened Dolores's life, that I had weapons caches, that I was planning violence. Classic projection from someone actually planning violence herself. Then came the infrastructure attacks. Power to my cabin cut at 2 p.m., supposedly a maintenance issue. Water tested positive for E. coli an hour later, though my private well had been pristine for 70 years. By evening, dead fish decorated my porch with a note. Soldiers who don't retreat get buried. The fish were store-bought tilapia. Even her threats were fake. Burkhart documented everything, building a federal case in real time. She's panicking, he observed, photographing the fish. Desperate people make mistakes. She's creating evidence faster than we could plant it. He made calls to FBI contacts, state police, federal prosecutors. The machinery of justice was warming up. That evening, something shifted in town. The dispatcher who'd refused to send corrupt locals to my property, she called me directly. "Marcus, heads up. Dolores just tried to file a false police report claiming you threatened her with a weapon. I refused to take it. I'm done enabling her." 2 HOA board members texted similar messages. Dolores's empire was cracking from within. Sunday 4 a.m. volunteers arrived quietly. Cars parked along the road for half a mile. Tom's tech team set up streaming headquarters in my living room, screens glowing like mission control. Sarah Winters and her crew positioned cameras for optimal angles. The community arranged chairs while Pastor Williams set up a small sound system. By 5:30, over 200 people had gathered. The Nguyens drove 3 hours to be here. Former HOA board members sat in the front row. Sheriff Patterson showed up, saw the crowd and media, and suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. Even rats know when the ship's sinking. The live streams went active at 5:45. "Good morning, Internet," Tom announced to his screens. "Welcome to the most documented HOA takedown in history. Current viewers, 1,247 and climbing." Comments poured in from around the world. Turns out everyone everywhere hates corrupt HOAs. At 5:55, engines roared up my drive. Dolores's white Escalade led a convoy, 2 security vehicles, a van with contractors, and surprisingly a news van from a different station. She'd brought her own media, not knowing we had better coverage. Our preparations were invisible from the drive. She thought she was catching me alone. I sat at my kitchen table, visible through the window. Burkhart beside me, badge now prominently displayed on the table next to his coffee. We played cards like nothing was happening, though my hands itched for action. The crowd remained silent, hidden by the house, waiting for their cue. The dashboard clock in Dolores's Escalade would read 6 a.m. Dawn breaking over Pine Ridge Lake, mist rising off the water like spirits of all the families she'd destroyed. 200 witnesses ready, 3 news crews recording, thousands watching online, federal investigators on speed dial. The trap wasn't just set, it was art. Dolores thought she was coming to finish me. Instead, she was about to become the star of her own downfall, broadcast live to the world. 6 a.m. sharp. Dolores burst from her Escalade like a pantsuited hurricane, her crew spreading out in what they probably thought was an intimidating formation. 2 security guards flanked her, one carrying zip ties, the other filming on his phone. Behind them, a man with a sledgehammer, because apparently breaking down doors was now her signature move. Her lawyer Daniels tagged along, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Marcus Holloway," she bellowed, storming toward my porch. "By the authority vested in me as HOA president, you're under arrest for chronic violations, totaling $50,000 in fines." She waved a stack of papers like a battle flag. "Surrender now or we'll force entry." I stayed seated inside, visible through the window. Burkhart calmly dealt another hand of cards. The crowd behind my house held their breath, 200 people silent as church mice. The live stream viewer count hit 8,000. "Last chance, soldier boy," Dolores shrieked. She'd worn her purple power suit today, the one that made her look like an angry eggplant. "We know you're in there. Come out with your hands up." The security guards shifted nervously. They'd signed up to check parking permits, not storm cabins. When I didn't respond, she grabbed the sledgehammer herself. "Fine, just like last time." She strutted to my door, hammer raised, face twisted in triumph. The sun caught her helmet hair, making it gleam like a supervillain's crown. This was her moment, her final victory over the troublesome veteran who dared say no. Crack! The first blow splintered wood. Crack! The second popped hinges. By the third swing, my door hung open like a broken tooth. She stood in the doorway, panting, hammer raised, savoring her moment. "There, now come out before—" She saw Burkhart's badge first, then his face, then his slight smile as he set down his cards. The hammer slipped from her fingers, clattering on my porch. "Who? What?" "Morning, Ms. Wickham," Burkhart said pleasantly. "Chief Raymond Burkhart, State Police Internal Affairs Division. Retired, but still sworn. Please continue your criminal trespass and destruction of property." "We're getting wonderful footage." The color drained from her face like someone pulled a plug. She stepped backward, almost tripping over the hammer. "This is... You can't... I have authority." "To break down doors?" I asked, finally standing. "To trespass? To threaten arrest without a badge?" "Please, Dolores, tell us more about your authority." I gestured toward the window. "Tell everyone." That's when she noticed the crowd. 200 faces appeared around the corner of my house like ghosts materializing. The Nguyen's, the Petersons, Janet Thorpe. Every family she'd terrorized, every person she'd stepped on, every life she'd tried to ruin. They stood witness, phones raised, recording everything. "No," she whispered. Then louder. "No, you're all trespassing. This is HOA property." She spun to her security guards. "Arrest them, all of them." The guards looked at the crowd, at Burkhart, at their phones showing thousands of viewers, and made the smartest decision of their careers. They walked to their car and left. Dolores's lawyer tried damage control. Everyone remained calm. Ms. Wickham was simply executing lawful HOA remedies. By committing breaking and entering, Sarah Winters stepped forward, her camera crew capturing every angle. Assault with a deadly weapon? Impersonating law enforcement? This is Sarah Winters, Channel 7 News, and we're streaming live as HOA President Dolores Wickham appears to have committed multiple felonies. The crowd began moving closer, not threatening, just witnessing. Dolores backed against her Escalade, suddenly small without her power structure. "You can't do this!" she screamed. "I own this town. The mayor is my brother-in-law. The sheriff works for me." "Actually," a new voice called out, "the sheriff just resigned." FBI Special Agent Patricia Morris stepped from an unmarked car, credentials out. "As did your brother-in-law. They're both in custody, along with Inspector Harold Wickham. Ms. Wickham, you're under arrest for racketeering, extortion, wire fraud, and about 30 other charges were still tallying." Dolores tried to run, in heels, on gravel. She made it 3 steps before face-planting next to her license plate that read "Boss Lady." The live stream chat exploded with laughter emojis. Tom announced, 25,000 viewers, folks, and climbing. As Agent Morris cuffed her, Dolores made one last desperate play. "This is all his fault." She jabbed her chin at me. "That psycho veteran threatened me. He's dangerous. He's—" "The legal owner of all HOA land," I interrupted calmly. "Including the ground your house sits on, Dolores." The silence was beautiful. "What?" Dolores's voice cracked like thin ice. She struggled against the cuffs, mascara running in black rivers. "You don't own anything. This is my kingdom." I pulled out the 1922 deed, protected in clear plastic. "Actually, Dolores, let me tell you a story. My great-grandfather Samuel Holloway sold this land to developers with one special clause. If anyone used the property for hostile acts against the Holloway family, ownership reverts to us. Every fine, every threat, every trespass, you triggered the clause 100 times over." Danny stepped forward with the legal filing. "As Mr. Holloway's attorney, I can confirm the reversion clause was activated this morning at 6 a.m. when you committed breaking and entering. The entire 347 acres of Lakeshore Estates now belongs to the Holloway estate." The crowd gasped. HOA residents who joined us thinking they were just watching Dolores fall suddenly realized their homes sat on my land. I raised my hand for quiet. "Folks, relax. I'm not Dolores. Here's what's going to happen." I turned to face the cameras, the crowd, the thousands watching online. This was the moment that mattered. Effective immediately, the Lakeshore Estates HOA is dissolved. No more fees, no more fines, no more petty dictators measuring your grass with rulers. Cheers erupted, but I wasn't done. Every current resident will receive a deed to their property free and clear. The only requirement? You sign a community charter promising to never form another HOA on this land. Laughter mixed with applause. Even Burkhart was grinning. Common areas, the beach, the walking trails, the playground, will be managed by a community trust. Equal access for everyone. The Nguyen family, the Petersons, everyone Dolores drove out. You have the first right to buy back your properties at the price she stole them for. Mr. Nguyen was crying. His daughter, the MIT student, hugged him as he whispered, "We can go home." As for funds recovered from Ms. Wickham's various accounts, I continued, they'll establish the Pine Ridge Community Fund, scholarships for local kids, support for seniors, and an annual Freedom Festival celebrating the day we took back our community from corruption. Sarah Winters pushed forward with her microphone. "Mr. Holloway, you could have kept millions in land value. Why give it away?" "Because this was never about money," I said, looking directly at Dolores. "It was about justice. It was about community. It was about showing that when good people stand together, no bully is strong enough to break us." Agent Morris led Dolores toward the FBI vehicle. She tried one last manipulative play, tears streaming. "Please, I have medical conditions. I was only trying to improve property values. Marcus, please." "Dolores," I said calmly, "you poisoned an old woman's roses. You burned down a family's carpentry shop. You used my military service as a weapon against me. You threatened and extorted honest people for 7 years. So here's my final message to you." I paused, making sure every camera caught this moment. The sunrise behind me painted the lake gold. 200 witnesses leaned in. The live stream showed 47,000 viewers waiting. Your HOA presidency is over. Your real estate license is gone. Your freedom is forfeit. But most importantly, your reign of terror ends today. This lake, this community, these people, they're free. And you're going to federal prison where the only grass you'll see is in the exercise yard, no measuring required. The crowd erupted, not angry cheers or vengeful shouts, but something deeper. The sound of relief, of justice served, of community reclaimed. Dolores slumped in the agent's custody, finally understanding she'd lost everything by trying to take everything. Tom called out viewer numbers. 60,000 watching, comments coming from all 50 states, 12 countries. The story was going viral, but more importantly, it was going home with every person here. As the FBI vehicle drove away with Dolores, Pastor Williams stepped forward. Friends, let's take a moment. He didn't pray for vengeance or even justice. He prayed for healing, for community, for the strength to rebuild what corruption had torn down. When he finished, the sun had fully risen, burning off the last of the morning mist. Margaret Morgan, the former board member who'd brought crucial evidence, approached with tears in her eyes. My grandmother used to say, "Evil prevails when good people do nothing." Today, Marcus, good people did something. I looked around at my neighbors, my community, my grandfather's legacy preserved and protected. No, Margaret, today, good people did everything. 6 months later, I stood on my dock watching kids cannonball into the lake, the same water Dolores had tried to privatize. Their shrieks of joy mixed with the sizzle of banh mi from the Nguyen family's rebuilt restaurant. They'd returned within days of Dolores' arrest, and their grand reopening had drawn crowds from 3 counties. Turns out, people missed authentic food more than they feared fake authority. The legal aftermath hit harder than a tsunami of justice. Dolores pulled 12 years federal time, no parole, no country club prison. Her empire crumbled faster than wet cardboard. Corrupt Inspector Harold got 5 years and cried during sentencing. 2 deputies, 3 years each. Her brother-in-law, the mayor, sang like a karaoke champion to reduce his 7-year sentence. The FBI uncovered similar schemes in 4 states, 23 HOAs, 1,400 victims. Our little lake town had accidentally exposed a $12 million criminal network. Sarah Winters texted me a photo, her holding an Emmy. Documentary just won. You made this possible. Her coverage sparked nationwide reform. The Holloway Act now required HOA boards to carry liability insurance, submit to annual audits, and face personal criminal charges for harassment. 17 states had passed versions. Dolores had become the face of HOA corruption. Her mugshot was literally in textbooks. The Pine Ridge Community Trust had resurrected our town. Without blood-sucking HOA fees, families had money for actual life. 5 scholarship recipients headed to college debt-free. The Petersons' son studied architecture at Cornell, designing communities that connect, not control. Janet Thorpe's Heritage Roses won Best in Show at Nationals. She dedicated the trophy to that witch in federal prison who tried to poison beauty. Dolores's former mansion served as our community center. Her personal office was now the children's library. Kids read stories where she'd plotted destruction. The poetry of justice tastes better than Grammy's apple pie, which we served at every event. Chief Burkhart visited monthly, teaching kids about justice between fishing trips. You all transformed from victims to victors, he'd tell them. Remember, bullies are just cowards with temporary power. He'd caught a record base from the spot where Dolores had tried to ban fishing. Even the fish celebrated freedom. Property values jumped 30%. Turns out, people pay more for liberty than tyranny. New families arrived weekly, drawn by our story. We welcomed them with BBQs, not bylaws. The lake sparkled cleaner, like nature itself exhaled after holding its breath for 7 years. The Freedom Festival drew 5,000 people. Families drove hundreds of miles seeking inspiration, strategies, hope. We provided all 3. Agent Morris delivered the keynote. The Holloway case redefined civilian justice. One man's documentation took down an interstate crime ring. The crowd gave standing ovations to every family Dolores had wronged. As sunset torched the sky, orange and purple, I addressed the crowd from the same porch Dolores had sledgehammered. No script, just truth fermented in triumph. Dolores believed power meant crushing others beneath designer heels. She thought fear was concrete and community was smoke. She learned different. Every tyrant depends on good people staying silent, isolated, convinced they're powerless. But here's the equation she never understood. Courage plus documentation plus community equals justice. When you face your own Dolores, and you will, Remember this. Record everything. Every threat, every trespass, every twisted interpretation of rules. Find your tribe. Learn your rights. File your complaints. And never let anyone convince you their plastic authority outweighs your authentic rights. My grandfather planted that oak Dolores tried to chainsaw. It's still standing, taller than ever. We're still standing, and will keep standing long after every petty dictator has fallen. The crowd erupted. American flags waved. Children who'd never known HOA oppression played freely. Tom showed me his phone. Today's stream hit 2 million views. Comments are novels. People organizing, resisting, winning. From her federal cell, Dolores had watched her legacy of intimidation birth a revolution of liberation. The woman who'd measured grass with rulers had inspired millions to measure freedom in acres. As families headed home to houses they actually owned, on streets they could freely walk. I thought about Grandpa. His cabin still smelled like pipe tobacco and justice. He'd planted more than an oak tree. He'd planted the roots of resistance. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tonight, Pine Ridge breathed free. Got your own HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. And remember, when tyranny comes knocking, make sure you're recording. Hit subscribe to HOA Stories for more tales of neighborhood justice served colder than Dolores's heart in solitary.
We appreciate you spending your time with us on HOA Stories, where HOA Karens finally get checked. If you enjoyed today's drama, hit like, comment on your favorite part below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to catch our next HOA Showdown.